good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to Red Hot Talk once again. And I guess this is our last week talking about camera brands, and unless there is another brand that we have missed, or something else that you may want to listen to. I know there are a couple of brands out there that we haven't quite mentioned, but I think probably most of you guys would know. And one of the cameras brands would be PhaseONE, with a French camera maker who makes a digital rangefinder and mount digital rangefinders, but they are relatively low-co, relatively little known to most of people, and so it's quite niche, probably too niche for us to maybe talk about. But if you want to listen to it, please do give us a shout. We shall try our best to get some information, and we can talk to you guys about PhaseONE. But anyway, this is going to be our last week talking about brands, and we are more focusing on the medium format, because we talked about all the APS-C, all the Micro Four Third, all the full frame brands pretty much, and we are now on to the last bit, the medium format, and we're trying to group it all together because you know, I don't think many of us actually use medium formats, but I'm pretty sure that if for those who do, might actually appreciate to learn a thing or two about these brands as well. So we're going to focusing on the Fujifilm. We're going to bring back Fujifilm once again, because last time when we talked about, we didn't quite talk about their GFX line, which is the medium format line. So I'm going to bring them back in. Then we're going to talk about Hasselblad and PhaseONE and the oddball DJI. We're going to talk a little bit about that towards the end. So just to ask you, audience help right here, how many of you have used medium format, film, analog, or digital? And we'd like to hear from you what sort of system you've been using, what sort of camera you had used before, and whether you still use digital medium format. We would like to hear your experience and why you think medium format is you know, part of your camera system collections, and why do you use it now in today's digital market, not full frame or vice versa, or they are simply just an addition to what you already have. Rod, you have done a lot of reviews in the past, and so we're going to start it off. Out of all these brands that we just talked about, which is kind of your favorite brand? We'll start off with your favorite brand first.
It's difficult. I think Fujifilm makes the most practical medium format cameras, but I do rather like the Hasselblad. So a bit weird and flaky, but Hasselblad XCD cameras I do have a soft spot for. So so Fujifilm, if I use my head, possibly Hasselblad with my heart.
Right, it's kind of like the Leica moment, right?
I think it's interesting. I think the GFX lineup is very interesting for a number of reasons. One of which is cost, because something like the GFX 100S2, which is very modern camera, hybrid camera, costs less than some full frame cameras, which is very interesting. And I think B&H still has some old Fujifilm GFX 50S2 cameras on sale for about $3,000.
Right.
That's about what about the price. Oh, hello. If I've frozen, hang on.
Yep, Rod is frozen.
Shall I rejoin?
Oh, no, it's back. Oh, hang on, it's gone. First glitch of the day, and hopefully we should be okay afterward, because last week we didn't have any hiccups, and this week we are not entirely sure what's going back. Hello everybody, and welcome back. There we go. Yay!
I got lost there. If it happens again, I'll reset my internet connection. I think it's probably my fault, mine. I don't know how far I got with that. Before I disappeared.
You were talking about the GFX, and
yeah. So the price, they're now, you can get a 100 megapixel GFX for less than the cost of some full frame mirrorless cameras.
Yeah, which
is insane. B&H has the GFX 50S2, which has been discontinued. They still got that at like $3,000, which is about mid-range full frame mirrorless price point now. So it's quite crazy. It is. But I think if we're going to talk about Leica moments, the Hasselblads I've used, the XCDs in particular, they are just things of beauty in themselves, but they are a bit flaky. I'm told the 100 is better than 50, but the 50, the one I reviewed had a mind of its own, and it wasn't much of a mind, I might tell you. So, but it did encourage me. It did encourage me to take better photographs.
That's interesting.
It's curious. It's curious. Yeah. It's like a Leica. It's a camera you have to live up to, or you feel you have to live up to. So it makes you go the extra mile. It's a strange thing.
So it's almost like you as a photographer have to work around the camera, adapt to what the camera offers instead of,
I think so. I think so. But also in a way, it's that this is a special camera. I've got to make an effort here. I can't just go out, snap away at the usual subjects. I have to work a bit harder to do justice to something that's actually quite special. So it's a bit of psychology involved, I think.
It is. And but another thing about medium format is, in today's digital world, is for those who haven't used medium format film cameras in the past, we probably don't know that the digital sensor size that in today's medium format cameras are actually a lot smaller than the 120 or the medium format size film that we used to have. So you don't necessarily actually gain the same kind of look if you have used film analog medium format cameras before. Certainly, if you use the same lens, for instance, and in fact, it's essentially like a crop format of the original medium format or 120 films. Rod is gone again. Hopefully he'll be back. So Andrew, actually, you said I haven't used 120 for a long time. Would really like to give it a go again. No expectation of ever have a medium format digital system. I would like to ask you, Andrew, why would you say that? Why wouldn't you want to try digital medium format camera? I'm not talking about cost. Let's scrap the cost aside. And would anybody listening right now would like to give medium format digital a try to see, what the fuss is about? Why people want to have medium format? Because in the past, in the film days, medium format is the format to go. And for those who are really into commercial photography, people used to shoot with 120 because of the image quality, the way you can enlarge a photograph to let's say a wall size. That's why people use larger formats than the 35mm. 35mm is really a portable format for people to print like 6x5, 7x5, 6x4, that kind of prints. So anything larger, people were starting to go with medium format camera, and that is why in the olden days, well, I wouldn't say even olden days, as recent as like 80s and the 90s. Wedding photographers were still using medium format cameras, because for people who want to print wedding albums, like larger wedding albums, if they want better, sharper images, they always have to use medium format cameras. But obviously back in the analog days, it's very different to what we call the reportage approach today. So people basically snap loads and they don't really care about printing large anymore. However, the argument also is gone, because nowadays we have high resolution 35mm or full frame format, so you can print big if you really want to. So the world has changed quite a bit. So the question is, I think to Rod as well now, is do you think, just a broader sense, maybe addressing the elephant in the room now, do you think that medium format still has a future, judging by the 35mm or full frame format now is approaching the resolutions that medium format now offers?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because in some ways, modern digital medium format isn't the same as old school analog medium format. So you were talking there about 6x6 centimeter 120 roll film.
Yep.
One of the advantages of that was not just the size of the negative, but you didn't have to rotate the camera. You could crop the same shot vertically, horizontally, have it square, any way you like.
Yep.
The thing is, there aren't any medium format digital cameras that have 6x6 centimeter sensors. So back in the day, back when everyone was shooting 6x6, there was also 645, wasn't there? 6 by 4.5 centimeters, which I think a lot of photographers at the time thought was. I think a lot of photographers at the time thought that was like a poor man's medium format. But the fact is that this 645 format, it's what companies today see as medium format full frame. So PhaseONE makes what they call a full frame medium format camera, which is close to the old 645 film format. However, the medium format sensors in the GFX line and the Hasselblad XCD line are smaller still. They are like to full frame medium format what APS-C is to full frame. So they're like halfway. They're halfway between full frame and proper medium format. It's complicated, isn't it? But they are not medium format sensors that film photographers would recognize.
Yeah, and I
not
think,
sure
I
that
think
helped.
I think it would be quite funny if one day one of these companies or another companies suddenly launch a 6x6 digital sensor, and what are they going to call it? Full frame medium format, like you said, full medium format. That's going to be awkward, right?
Do you know, I was going to bring this up actually. I do wish somebody would have the bottle to make a square sensor, because that would solve so many issues that, you know, for many years we always wanted rectangular images, but now it makes sense today to have square, because then you can crop anywhere you like. You shoot a social event or a wedding or whatever. You can crop it how the client wants without worrying about it at the time. But also, if you've got to shoot video, you can do social video and regular horizontal video at the same time. Film them both. And then you deliver to the client, which they want for whatever purpose.
It's essentially, it's like the Lumix cameras that can shoot open gate when you're actually using the entire sensor to video to record the whole image covering the entire sensor, and you can crop it later whichever format you want, vertical, horizontal, or even move up and down, basically recompose in post-production. And that is certainly something that a square sensor, or utilizing the full 4x3, 1x1 kind of format sensors makes it possible to do that kind of thing. And certainly, I think from a filming point of view, it's quite interesting, especially that you can do a little bit of recomposing afterward. Right, I think Rod is frozen again. Something is not happening smoothly in Rod's internet today. Oh, he's back again. Oh, we got no sound. We got no sound. 1 second. I think you may have to come back in again. Right. Okay, let's see what happens afterward. No. Oh, can you say something, Rod?
Oh, yeah, I was in the green room. Now I'm back. So
you're back.
Yeah, I'll be off again in about 30 seconds. I'll reset my router, but that takes about 5 minutes. So
okay, right.
Let's keep going.
I'm just looking at Robert. Is interesting. He's got a comment. I just want to bring that up because it is interesting. So what's the advantage? Why people use medium format? Is it just about depth of field, just like, you know, crop sensor, micro four thirds against full frame?
Well, actually, that doesn't work, because full frame lenses are more than a stop faster than medium format lenses. So what happens is the fastest medium format lens, let me think, what's it going to be about? I think there's a Hasselblad F2, maybe.
Yes.
But GFX lineup, it probably stops at F2.8. I'm plugging this out of the air. But the thing is that these medium format lenses are quite big. And I would say the difference in depth of field between full frame and this format is probably about 1 f-stop. But the fact is that you can get full frame lenses that are a couple of f-stops faster. So if you want shallow depth of field, strangely, I think it's actually going to be easier with full frame and a very fast lens, because the medium format lenses aren't that fast.
No. And certainly because of the like what we discussed earlier, the sensor size aren't exactly that much bigger than full frame, so you're not necessarily gaining this the depth of field like we used to with 120 format. And I remember in the old days when we have the even if you remember those who shoot Rolleiflex, the 2.8 lenses, you just shoot wider than the 2.8, you can see that depth of field is so shallow. It's almost like a 1.4, maybe even 1.2 in the full frame terms. So it's a very different beast altogether.
I'm going to make it. I'm going to pluck these figures out of the air based on smaller formats, but I would say you would get 1 f-stop less depth of field with the new small medium format, and certainly 2 stops less with proper medium format. So, if you've got an f1.4 in full frame, you're still going to need an f2 on a GFX or a Hasselblad XCD to get the same depth of field. So at the moment, if shallow depth of field is what you want, I'd say full frame gives you more potential, because you can't get medium format lenses as fast as full frame ones. They don't exist.
Then again, obviously, if I continue Robert's a question is, so what's the advantage in now using like modern medium format cameras over full frame?
The thing I always notice about increasing sensor sizes is that regardless of megapixels, the larger sensors always seem to deliver that little bit superior clarity and micro contrast and bite at a pixel level. So I think a medium format camera just gives you subtly superior fine detail to a full frame one. But keep in mind, of course, that the current Fujifilm models, they're 100 megapixels. So that's 2, 3, or 4 times what full frame camera users have available. So it's a kind of bit of both. It's outright resolution would be the key thing, but there's a certain clarity and depth to the images as well. Yeah. But it's not a huge leap.
What about tonalities? The gradations of from bright to shadow, and also the in terms of color depth.
I personally have never seen a whole lot of difference. Technically, you do get more dynamic range with a larger sensor if the photo sites are larger, because that's the key thing. But I've never seen a lot of practical difference, because I think what happens in real life is that you might get one camera that can perhaps do 12 stops of dynamic range. Another one, maybe a medium format camera, might be able to do 13 or 14. Yeah. But in real life, most of the time, you usually need about 8 or 9 or 10.
Yeah.
And if you need a lot more, it's generally about 16 to 17 or 18. So the advantage of a bigger sensor doesn't solve all your problems. It might just give you a small advantage, but it won't fix very high contrast scenes.
Yeah. And that's interesting though, now you say it. And in that particular case, people is probably better off in investing full frame cameras and kind of skip medium format altogether, if I'm correct. And Rod is back. Oh no, it's got no voice again. Oh dear. Right. I need to chuck you out first. Let's see what happened. Right. It's not a smooth start today, and hopefully Rod will be back. No. Yes. No. It's in green room. Okay. Right. I think Rod is going to reset the router by the looks of it. So let's talk about things in general over for now, and see what else people can. Oh, he is back.
So if this happens again, sorry everyone. I'll duck out for 5 minutes. I'll go and reset my router, and then come back in later. So
that's okay. No problem.
The fault.
I will go solo for a few minutes. So just go back to the questions. So. In this particular case, would you think, if anyone who's in like new to photography but getting quite serious, they want to do more stuff and get a more capable system, getting better image quality, it's better to go with, let's say, full frame over medium format? Because generally, you look at medium format cameras, despite what you just said, they may be technically a little bit better, but in real life applications, the differences aren't going to be as big. But then when you invest in a medium format camera, not only it's more expensive, generally speaking, and also they're much bulkier, much heavier. The lenses are definitely, like a 20%, 30% larger and heavier than full frame lenses, equivalent. So it isn't really a point for medium format. And obviously the ultimate question would be, there's two questions there. Would you still buy one?
I think the camera bodies themselves are actually quite reasonably priced considering, but you've got to allow for the lenses, because these medium format lenses made by Fujifilm and Hasselblad, they are made for quite demanding professional use. There are no cheap medium format lenses.
Yeah.
So you can't buy an inexpensive medium format camera like a GFX50S2, then go and find a cheap kit lens. You might be able to find something to go in a bundle with it that saves you a bit of money, but the lenses are big and they are quite expensive. Against that, I haven't used a bad one. All the medium format lenses I've used from Fujifilm and Hasselblad have been very, very good indeed. At or above the high standard of full frame lenses, but they're expensive.
Yeah.
And they're quite big. You know, in medium format world, a 2x zoom is exotic.
And I do know like how large the lenses, especially when you look at some of the GFX lenses, they are definitely quite a beast. Yeah. Quite a beast. Yes.
Yeah.
But then
So yeah, for quality, I would be tempted because they're quite good value, I think. But you just got to allow for lenses. You can't get the same range of lenses. They'd be bigger and they'll be more expensive. So I would say it's a good move, provided the kind of photography you do, you're happy to stick to one or two key lenses rather than having a huge range.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, for those who are enthusiastic or about the ideas of having a medium format cameras, my suggestion is, you know, while there are still some relatively affordable analog medium format cameras about, it's better to grab one, you know, have a try and to see whether you like that format. And if you do, then you can probably, you know, go out to the camera store and try out some of the medium format cameras only if you really want to. But I think ultimately, practically thinking wise, I think to getting a crop sensor format or a full frame format is probably, you know, better suit for day-to-day photographers than because medium format digital cameras are definitely aiming for high-end professionals and definitely not for day-to-day photographers who just want to go out and for a couple of snapshots here and there. They are definitely wanting people who want the ultimate detail photography, like those who need it, all the micro contrast they can extract out from whatever they're shooting, most likely landscape or macros and something like that. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very expensive affair. And I know, you know, compared to Leica, probably still, you know, some way
cheap.
But talking about price, we haven't talked about PhaseONE because you talked about Hasselblad and Fujifilm. PhaseONE is also very expensive. In fact, they're probably, out of all of them, is probably the most expensive digital medium format camera system out there.
I would say easily. Easily. I'm just seeing if I can be a bit more precise about the costs and the types. So PhaseONE makes two types. They make a kind of modular DSLR design, which is close to the old 645 format. But they also made the more portable XT cameras, which come with just a choice of one or two different lenses, which is designed primarily for landscape or architecture. What's interesting about the XT cameras is that they are actually quite small. They're I'd say they're square rather than rectangular, but they're not really any larger than a full frame camera with a prime lens. They're curious things, but they are massively expensive, sadly. But I did go on a shoot with one of PhaseONE's ambassadors a while ago, and he had an XT with him, and he set up a long exposure shot at dusk. They have an interesting feature comparable to Olympus's or M Systems live ND filter, where it will build an exposure. Basically, with the XT system, you start an exposure and you just watch it build, and you can wait as long as you like, and you stop when you think it looks right. So the exposure is correct when you start, but the more frame, the more frames you take,
the live bolt features.
Live bulb, that's the one. But the exposure doesn't build. It's not quite like that. You could take an instantaneous exposure and it would be correct. But the longer you keep on exposing it, the more it averages out the frames and gives you that silky smooth effect on water and skies. So you can do a long exposure effect, but the actual exposure doesn't change. It's hard to explain. It's like an averaging system for multiple exposures of the same scene. But the bottom line is that you don't need ND filters, and you can, if you're prepared to stand around however long you want to stand around for, and get some quite spectacular long exposure results. So it's an interesting system, but fabulously expensive because of the engineering, because of the lens quality, and because of the technology, and because they only make, I don't know how many they make, a few thousand a year, perhaps, if that. You know, not like Canon or Nikon.
Yeah, so that's interesting though. And how does PhaseONE even be able to survive in today's market if they only make so few cameras and only a handful of photographers out there using the system?
I don't know how many there are. There might be more than we think, because photographers who buy into the PhaseONE system are going to have, then they're not going to be your typical photographer. You know, they're not going to be at camera clubs. They're not going to be at shows. You're not going to see them very much. They're going to be high budget commercial advertising photographers.
But then again, but the percentage of those photographers are definitely a lot smaller than, let's say, back in the 80s and 90s. Because a lot of those commercial photographers has switched to higher resolution full frame cameras, if not, you know, GFX or Hasselblad, like I said earlier, than the PhaseONE system. PhaseONE are, because of the cost itself, it really are the top end of the commercial photography.
I think so. I think Hasselblad has an equivalent. It's the H6D lineup, I think, similar to the PhaseONE modular system, similar sort of cost. Yeah. So these are like old school digital medium format cameras that really did cost a packet. Yeah, so it's only smaller format cameras like the GFX and the XCD range, X1D, X2D, that have really brought it within range of average photographers. But I don't know how I don't know how many cameras PhaseONE sells. I don't think they tell me, but at 50 or 60 grand a pop, they probably don't have to sell a lot.
No, they don't. And but then again, I'm considering those customers who buy these cameras aren't going to upgrade every 2 years, so they probably keep one for like 6, 7, 8, 10 years.
I don't know. I'm not so sure. I told you that story last week about the lady I met in Iceland who just put away, it turns out, her XT just to take out a GA50. So people have surprising amount of money. Some people,
some people, and I guess those who are into Leica system is in the same kind of arena, right? You know, every time Leica launches a special edition, whether it's costing them £15,000, £18,000, they would just instantly got it, and there's no decision making there.
No, and I think though that if I don't know, I'm just going to pluck an idea out of the air here. If, for example, you were pitching for a photographic contract with Bentley or Rolls-Royce.
Yeah.
And he turned up with the Sony, I think they'd show you the door. But if you arrived with two assistants and a trolley case filled with PhaseONE gear, they might show an interest. So, you know, it's like the whole Emperor's New Clothes thing, isn't it? You have to turn up with the right kits to impress the clients.
Even though you probably can get the same shot with a much lesser system.
Well, yes, if all you're doing is taking pictures of the website. but people who pay big bucks to photographers and filmmakers and video studios need reassurance that it's worth the cost. And one of the ways of doing it is to have gear like that.
Image is everything sometimes, especially in the commercial world. One interesting comment just popped up from Andrew Leslie. Let me just bring it up because we actually did forget about this. Pentax also made medium format digital cameras, the 645D, right? But I'm not entirely sure. Correct me if anyone knows. Have they discontinued the line already, or they're still making them?
It seems to go through phases. So I think at the moment you can buy them. You seem to go through a phase for a couple of years where it's disappeared and you think that's it then it comes back like so many Pentax cameras. But yeah, the 645 has always been quite well regarded.
Yeah, and but I think one of the thing is, if you do fancy some sort of old school feel about a medium format camera, being a clunky big old SLR type kind of beast with a big mirror slapping around the body, you can even feel the vibration through your hand. The 645D will be one of them, and that certainly is very interesting. I think the last generations, very last Pentax 645D was actually quite well regarded in terms of image quality, and I remember people reviewing
645Z.
It's actually
645Z now, yeah. It's we're up to the 645Z.
Ah, right.
But there is just one thing I want to check.
Okay.
That's 6445 sensor size to see whether that is a big. Well, there we go. So it's not. So it's a bit cheeky because Pentax calls it the 645Z.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have a 645 size sensor.
No.
So it's a cheeky smaller medium format like Fujifilm and Hasselblad X1D and X2D. So it's a bit cheeky calling it the 645.
Yeah, and also I know that because Andrew already said it in the UK, and actually use old 645.
Yeah.
No, you can use old 645 lenses, but then again, because it's smaller sensor, you have to employ some crop into the lenses, so you're not going to gain same depth of field or the focal length, for instance, if you use the film equivalents in the past. So like an 85 won't be 85 on the 645Z or whatever version you have. It's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be a lot closer. You more but like 105 or 120 in that case.
Yeah, and I think as well the results you get from the two formats, it's very easy. You tend to use medium format cameras more deliberately and carefully.
Yeah. And
you could argue that if you use the same kind of deliberation and care with a full frame camera, you might get a very similar outcome. It's like the argument you say about phones. If you treat a phone like a proper camera, you'll get proper photographs. So I think maybe some of the reputation of medium format cameras is because they make you work in a very careful, controlled way. And that gives you better results. So it's very hard to say. But I think one interesting thing from my point of view is that you won't necessarily get a look that's obviously different. You don't with going from, say, a Fujifilm X-mount camera to a GFX. Yeah. The images look the same. There's no kind of magic, no wow moment. However, Hasselblad cameras do have their own unique look, which you may like or you may not particularly like. But Hasselblad has its own very rich, very intense color science. Yeah. And it's unlike anything else. It's not really because it's a medium format camera. It's just the way Hasselblad processes data. But it's a very different look. So if you go from a regular full frame camera to a Hasselblad X1D or X2D, you look at the images and you'll go, wow, this is different. So I don't think that's the sensor size. That's just Hasselblad.
It could be the processing unit and also the lenses. The lenses definitely make the draw, makes it a little bit different, I guess. A bit like Leica lenses.
I'd say with the Hasselblads that I've used, it depends on the raw software you use, because these bring their own profiles and color shifts to raw files. But I would say that the most notable thing about the Hasselblad raw files that I've worked on is that the colors are quite dense and they don't clip as easily. And there's just a little bit more warmth perhaps to the colors. Okay. So they're also 16-bit RAWs, which is quite interesting. So
that's interesting.
I'm not convinced that makes a big difference, but for what it's worth,
Well, Gabriel has an interesting comment here as well. I'm just bringing it up just a And I used GFX 102 in R5 Mark II. The previous camera is a Hasselblad
Yeah.
H1.
Ah,
And the
the
CCD
H1, yeah.
sensor under controlled lighting condition was one of the best I've ever used. Interesting you mentioned CCD, because for those who in the Leica world, or even very early days of digital photography, always say something about the CCD sensors. They always say that the colors and coming up from the CCD sensor is a little bit different to the CMOS sensors. Seems to always have a little bit more contrast, a little bit, the color seems to be a little bit more saturated, have a certain pop to the actual subject in focus in any of the images. I'm not entirely sure. I mean, personally, I only have limited exposure to CCD sensors, because when I made the transition from analog to digital, I almost moved straight into CMOS sensors. I almost skipped the entire CCD generations. But from those that I spoke to who use CCD before, especially from the Leica community, they all vouch the M8 and the M9. They always say that the CCD from those cameras were spectacular. Some of the images coming out from those two cameras were simply not matched even by today's CMOS sensors. So that's interesting.
Everything used to be better, right? I don't know. I'm not so sure. I can't say anything about Leica CCDs, but I've used a lot of cameras in the CCD days. Right. And I was reviewing cameras in the gradual swap over from CCD to CMOS. And from my perspective, I don't think there's the slightest bit of difference. But other people may feel differently. But what CMOS did bring was just a generally improved image quality, just faster readout, bit less noise, and is clearly the way forward. But right. I'm willing to believe that certain CCD cameras deliver unique color renderings. It's just that I never saw one.
Right.
But they may exist.
They may exist. I'll take your words for it, Gabriel.
Well, but
not that because I don't believe you, just because I really don't have that experience to tell you about that.
But also those leave digital backs would have been completely unlike regular handheld camera sensors. You would get a completely different look, I think.
Yeah. Okay, well, we got two comments straight away first of all from Gabriel. The CCD sensor was the first global shutter sensor. Companies switched to CMOS due to cost effectiveness. That's interesting. I know CMOS does using scanning process from top down, left to right. So that's why you get these rolling shutter issues. That we see nowadays in a lot of especially larger format like full frame cameras, for instance, in the video world, or even in photography, if you employ silent shutter mode or electronic shutter mode, and you always see this rolling shutter if the sensor is not fast enough, like BSIs and things like that. If you traditional CMOSs, they are quite slow to react, and that's when you see all this kind of weird jelly movement.
I'm not sure CCDs were faster or not. Just trying to check now.
Andrew also says CCD is faster, and readout speed. Yes.
Well, it depends on you. There seems to be a balance of opinions according to Google. So you see now some people saying CMOS is faster than CCD, other people saying CCD is faster than CMOS. I don't think we're going to get the opportunity to test it, are we?
No. Well, certainly, like with the Sony's latest global shutter camera, the A9 III, certainly, it is the fastest sensor out there in the world at the moment for what it is. And I know global shutter is also being used by Pixie, by the French company we just talked about right at the beginning of the chat today. They did use a global shutter sensor, but it's a very low resolution sensor. I think the latest generation has ditched that completely. So
right,
global shutter sensor tends to be relatively low megapixel counts by comparison. That's for sure. I think that's probably needed for the current technologies. I'm pretty sure that will increase over time. But I think for those who needed that kind of speed, probably wouldn't need that sort of megapixels anyway.
Yeah, I think I'm going to investigate Gabriel's comments about the full sensor was exposed at one time. That wasn't a leaf shutter by any chance. I need to find out about CCD readout speeds, because there were certainly no global shutters in the CCD cameras that I reviewed. Yeah. So I'll investigate that a little bit further. But I think the other issue is that we'll report back. And I think the other thing is that things have moved on. We can't make direct comparisons, because now we're using resolutions which didn't exist when people were shooting with CCD sensors. So it's a very difficult comparison to make.
Out of curiosity, I know it's kind of sidetracked the chat a little bit. What was the highest resolution CCD sensor ever came out? I think it's pretty low, right? It's probably 12, 15 megapixel.
Well, it's are you talking about regular handheld cameras?
Yeah, regular handheld cameras.
I'm going to say 12.
Yeah.
Or maybe 10. I might say 10, actually, because I'm thinking of Nikon. Nikon had the D200, which I think might have been the last CCD DSLR. I think the D90 went CMOS. So I'm going to guess 10 megapixels. But somebody might be able to set me straight.
What is the Leica M9? I think that is the last CCD full frame
is
sensor.
It?
Yes.
Not CMOS?
No. 18 megapixel. There you go. 18.
And that's definitely a CCD.
It's a CCD, yes.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
There we go. Gabriel said 50 megapixel CCD.
Yeah, that be his leaf back, I would think, which that probably doesn't.
Digital back for medium format cameras.
Back, yeah, exactly, yeah.
So they're not quite the handheld cameras that we are referring to. But yes,
interesting.
Medium format, right? That's interesting.
So yeah, there seems to be some opinion that all CCD sensors have a global shutter, which is unexpected. But I'm not quite sure where that gets you, really, because unless you have a fast readout speed, it's not going to help you with stuff like sports or video. Don't know.
No, we shall find.
I know so little about this. I need to stop talking about it.
Right, in that case, let's go back to our general conversation about medium format. So we talk a little bit about PhaseONE being an ultra expensive beast, and we talk about Hasselblad. That takes your heart away. And then we talked about the Fujifilm, which is the medium format for the masses, if I can say that.
I think you can.
Yeah, generally is definitely the lowest cost among the three, and also probably the one that has the most lens selection, if I'm correct.
I would say
well. So Fujifilm has done a great a job in terms of popularizing medium format to the masses. However, when it comes to the overall percentage of medium format photographers out there, it's still decreasing, if not starting vanishing. And I think the full frame has taken over because it's definitely more versatile. You got way more selection when it comes to optics. And in certain situations, especially from a day-to-day point of view, you are more flexible because there are more faster lenses out there than a medium format. Because what Rod already said, the fastest medium format lenses you can buy for digital medium format cameras is f2. So that means it's not gonna be as flexible when it comes to extreme low light situations. So you're not going to be doing a lot of wildlife in the dark, for instance, and or a lot of the astrophotography. You do need bright lenses, wide bright lenses, and those things that medium format currently don't have. So you have to kind of revert back to full frame cameras, for instance, where you can have the 1.2, 0.95, 1.1, all these ultra fast primes out there they can have. Even like smaller format cameras like the Micro Four Third, APS-C, they all have these ultra fast prime as well, which has helped a lot of the astrophotography, ultra low light sports photography kind of thing. So interesting space that we have right now for the medium format cameras. For those who have used before, I already asked the question, do you actually still have some old medium format cameras lying around that you haven't been touched for a while? Would you actually go back, throw a film into it, just give it a go again, just to relive those kind of feeling of shooting with medium format? Because I remember back in the old days, whenever I switched between a 35mm to 120, and I always find myself that, oh wow, the 120 really is special, because when you look at those images that come out from it, it's so different to the traditional 35. I'm not just talking about depth of field, but there are certain look to those medium format cameras, whichever brand you're looking at, whether it's going to be Fuji, whether it's going to be Pentax, whether it's going to be Hasselblad, Rolleiflexes, anything, they just come out slightly different.
Yeah,
just like you said about Hasselblad, right? The XD does give you some kind of look that you can't get with other system.
I think possibly with film it's more exaggerated because of the obvious physical difference in size. If you use the 35mm transparencies,
yeah,
and then you get some 6x6 transparencies back from the lab, the comparison is just jaw-dropping, because of the sheer size difference. The tonality of the 120 transparencies just looks on a different plane. But I think that is a characteristic of analog film, where the format did make a big difference, because film doesn't have the same microscopic resolving power as a sensor. So it made a big difference in those days. Today, if you compare a 50 megapixel full frame image with a 50 megapixel medium format one, you're going to have to look pretty close to tell them apart, if you actually can. I mean, you might start to see more differences if you start doing some processing, but to the naked eye, straight at the camera, they're hard to tell apart.
Yeah, and this is the same argument with different format, not just between the full frame against medium format in today's world, but same thing. If you have a, let's say, 24 megapixel Micro Four Third against a 24 megapixel APS-C and a 24 megapixel full frame, you probably can't tell the difference. If you shoot exactly the same scene, same setting, same exposure, judging, like same depth of field effect, let's say you all stop down to f8, getting everything in focus, I don't think anyone can actually spot the difference.
Well, I think if you had all three in Capture One or Lightroom magnified to 100%, you would be able to start to see some nuanced differences, and probably even more so 200%. But in practical terms, if you're producing a print or producing an image for online, you're going to be effectively downsampling all of them. Yep. So those differences are largely going to be lost. So it's only if you're going to be making large images viewed close up that I think it's going to become a strong factor. The rest of the time, it's just for our own satisfaction, I think.
But funny you mentioned about prints, because that's the argument I always say about being a photographer, is that if you don't print your images just pure by looking at screens, and that's the time when you're starting to see people,
of course,
pixel peeping and start comparing things. But if you do print photos, whatever size, and you will actually see that a lot of the time you don't even need 50 megapixel for the size that you want, and most of the time 16 is probably more than enough to print large enough prints for your albums or large size prints.
Well, I think this is not intended as a trick question by any means, but is it possible to tell from this print what the format was? No, it's not. It's not. There's I can tell you from comparisons I made, this is a very sharp print. It's very good quality print. It's probably about 10 or 12 megapixels worth of resolution in this print. It's from a 24 megapixel camera, but the thing is that unless you'd have to print a lot bigger than this for the format to make a difference.
Yeah.
And as we said before, if you did print a lot bigger, you're going to stand a lot further away to look at it, because that's why we printed it bigger, right? So
Yep.
that's just a complicated argument. But I think there will be clients who will say, we need an image that's going to look good, like say 6 feet by 4 feet, or 6 meters by 4 meters, or whatever. And instead of trying to explain to them about viewing distance and resolution, it's probably better if you just turn up with a medium format camera, because that'll convince them. I'm sure a lot of the time this is what it is. They think,
it is.
We need a big print. You'd better turn up with a big camera.
Like the same argument, if you go to shoot Bentley, you're gonna better have an expensive camera kit too.
Yes, exactly. And expensive and complicated. And it'd better take you a while to set it up, to make sure that they think they're getting their money's worth.
The longer you set out, the more crew you bring together, the more they think about it's worthwhile.
It's all about the appearance of value, justifying the cost.
Even though you may have 2 tea boys there delivering tea to you.
if you're going to charge a fortune for a wedding, you better turn up with 3 or 4 people.
Oh yes, absolutely. Right. Okay. Let's talk about DJI and why I put the name DJI in today's chat. They don't make medium format cameras, even though they own Hasselblad. It's because there are some rumors kind of like popcorn popping around in the last few months, suggesting that they may release a camera at some point. And it wouldn't surprise me, judging by the fact that Rod and I just talked about it earlier. They actually do make a cine camera, a full frame cine camera, the Ronin 4D, in 2 versions, 6K and 8K version. They have their own mount, so they have now starting to release their own lenses, DJI own lenses, their own branded lenses.
DL mount, is it?
It's DL mount, yes.
Yeah.
So that means they are starting to build this ecosystem. So they have full frame lenses, they have full frame cine cameras, and what would stop them but making a full frame mirrorless cameras? Probably nothing at the moment. So they could easily just build one if they really want to.
Or are you suggesting they might make a medium format camera?
Well, I don't think they would go that far, but because they own Hasselblad, that means they're going to cannibalize, his own thing.
That's true. Yeah, but you think it might make a full frame?
Well, that wouldn't surprise me at all, because they already have the full frame lenses. They already have about 3 or 4 lenses now for the cine line. And so if they make a DL mount mirrorless cameras, that means that potentially they already start up with a few lenses straight away without having to think about it.
I think DJI just did recently launch another DL mount lens, didn't it?
They have the 75 1.2, I think, or F2. I can't remember which one it is.
Okay.
So it's a very interesting time for DJI, because they are definitely edging into the photography. Well, at the moment, it's a video world, because that's what they've been known for. Like the drones and everything's more towards video. However, now many photographers are now buying their drones for photography, for aerial photography. For those, like myself included, who couldn't afford to hire a helicopter to do some aerial shots, a drone would be the most economical way to enter that space, without costing you an arm and leg to do that. So I think for those who always wanted to do something from top down, drone aerial photography is probably the way to go. And because of that, they are definitely increasing photographer audience that entering the DJI space, and now they're seeing that they are launching lenses. The people wouldn't be. That's why people are starting to speculate that they might at some point release a digital camera for photographers, and they really, I don't think that would surprise me at all if one day it does that, with a mirrorless cameras and have, 30, 40 megapixels that utilizes the existing DL mount lenses that made for the cine line, or they may make a slightly different version of the lenses purely just for those cameras, use the same optics, for instance, just slightly change the autofocus motor and things like that. So that's an interesting thing. So that's why I throw DJI in today's chat. I think because they are an oddball out of all of these companies that we talked about in the last few months, and something that we haven't really talked about being them as for photographers. But I think it is time for them to maybe do something.
Do you not think that the DJI is only interested in moving images? And they have no interest at all in stills photography?
I don't think so. Considering they bought Hasselblad, and obviously they're eyeing the high-end photography clients. So like having a higher-end full-frame market that competes with the likes of Leica would possibly another way to look at it. But DJI's brand value hasn't always been, associated in the high-end, when I say not high-end, they just can't match the likes of Leica or Hasselblad in terms of brand values. Although DJI today compared to DJI 10 years ago, the values of the brand has gone up significantly, because now when people talk about drones and gimbals, they always associate DJI being the premium product, and all the rest are like second and third grade. So, well, I don't know.
Thing is, if the US bans DJI drones, they're going to have to make something else, aren't they? So Andrew wants to know, this camera speculation has been around for years. What's fueling this rumor return? Andrew, I think is Jimmy. Jimmy's doing it. I'm convinced.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, I believe that the rumor has returned simply because they suddenly, in the last couple of years, launched a few lenses for the Cine line. And because of the launches, now they have a collection of lenses. And it would be, let's say, from a business perspective, it would be a waste not to explore the idea of making a photography camera utilizing the same optical formula. They designed the lenses already. They can maximize the return on investment by making a different version, by launching a camera, and maximize the sales and make more of those lenses.
Do you not think there might be more value in the cine market than there is in stills photography?
In what way?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I think I can imagine DJI might have its eye on making more conventional cameras, but I find it hard to believe they'd have any interest in stills. And I feel their interest would be in cinema.
Yes, but like I said, because the space is out there, and DJI brand is now known, they could potentially make a more like a hybrid camera in a way, like still fairly heavily focused on video spec, a bit like the Lumix camera, like the GX line. So have a lot of video features, yet you can take quite a good photos.
I think that it's probably quite a good market for cine cameras that can get production stills.
Yeah.
During filming. I'm not quite sure whether that's the same as quite the same thing as stills cameras, but it is interesting nonetheless. But I think the whole drone thing must be worrying for DJI right now. I mean, it's all happened quite quickly. I don't imagine they planned for this years ago. But I think probably we're seeing a bit of diversification from DJI with that in mind. I mean, things like the action cams and the DJI pockets are interesting kind of diversification, aren't they?
Well, if you look at how DJI evolve over time, and like you said, the drone market has plateaued, a few years ago. Especially, drone regulations worldwide has changed significantly since about 10 years ago. Larger drones are literally unflyable in anywhere, any sort of dense cities areas. Because I remember 6-7 years ago, you are able to fly those big, massive, heavy drones in the city center without, being questioned by police. But nowadays, you'll be lucky to even take the drone out. And so like you will have to fly basically sub 250 gram drones in any dense areas. The certain areas you probably have no fly zones already. So things have changed already. So people really are thinking twice about buying drones these days, even though they're fun, they're good. I think they are, especially for the responsible ones, they are great tools for what you need to get, whether photography or videos. And DJI is certainly, probably one of the best out there to making those quality that photographers or filmmakers need for an affordable price. So I think DJI's diversification is evident, since they're entering the action market, trying to, take away the hero line, and also now they're making pocket cameras that are super popular for vloggers, and they're now entering all sorts of things as well, like the mic, all the wireless mics, and now they're taking over Rode, and then
have they? Oh yeah, you mean the mic technologies?
Yeah, the mic technologies, and but I think they've done a good job in terms of diversifications in that sense. So, like I said, it maybe an idea has already been bubbling around in all the executive or the R&D departments out there. Maybe they're thinking that, okay, what else can they make? What else can they do with the money? They have accumulated so much assets over the years.
All that money.
they bought Hasselblad already. So what else can we do about it? And so yeah, I wouldn't think twice if they do that.
It's interesting to see what they're going to do next.
Yeah.
Whether we'll get a Hasselblad, smaller format Hasselblads. Hasselblad did do a time with Sony years ago, didn't it? It came up this weird wooden thing. I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't think what it's called.
John Allen said DJI Pocket 2 and 3 are excellent for vlogging.
They are.
I mean, to be quite honest, I've tested and used many cameras that are aiming for vloggers, and out of all those cameras that I've used and tested, the Pocket 3 really is the best, if not life changing for those vloggers. Instead of lugging a big camera, using ultra wide angle lens, or using any other older kind of pocket line or similar to the pocket cameras like PhaseONE, for instance. None of them match the versatility and the quality that Pocket 3 has brought. And I would say DJI is very clever in doing their image processing. The algorithm that they wrote to process those images are on another level. When it comes to noise reduction, even though you still see noise, but it's definitely a lot more natural when you look at it than some of the competitors.
I think this is kind of getting away from the whole medium format thing, but since we're talking about it, I think the Pocket range has done quite a lot of damage to the gimbal market. Yes. Because who's going to mount a mirrorless camera on a gimbal? You've got to balance it. You've got to have 4 arms like hocks of ham to hold it. It's a few minutes work to get it set up, when you can get a DJI Pocket 3. It's literally in your pocket. You switch it on, does a little twizzle, and it's ready to shoot. And the stabilization, it's as good. You don't get the same range of lenses. You don't get that cinematic look. But it's such a simpler product to use that I think it must have taken a lot of the revenue out of the gimbal market. Yeah, I haven't used a gimbal for a while.
Well, I think now the gimbal is really aiming for the commercial filmmakers, or at least serious video makers. Wedding, for instance, wedding professionals, or like just small production houses. They will still use gimbals and mount a proper camera on top of it for the better quality footage that they want to acquire. But overall, I think a lot of the general public, a lot of YouTubers, for instance, they just simply use the Pocket 3 because it's, first of all, a lot lighter to carry around. You don't necessarily draw a lot of unnecessary attention from public because gimbals are big. They're not small.
I think I was at a wedding recently where they had videographers using both.
Yeah.
So they were filming the dance after the speeches.
Yeah.
And for the close-up stuff, they're using a Pocket 3 because they're not in the way. They can do that. But they did have, I'm not sure whether I think it might have been Sony, on a gimbal.
Yeah.
But of course I had to stand back for that because you can't shove a gimbal into the middle of a dance floor and expect to get any kind of footage. More likely you get a black eye. So, you have to use the right gear for the job. But I think the Pocket 3 has changed a lot of people's minds. I was impressed by the Pocket 2, but the Pocket 3 in particular. Yeah. Just this idea, you've got the camera on a gimbal, and you don't have to set it up.
But now talk about that, Do you even remember DJI Osmo Muse? I don't know if you remember that. You know, it's basically
I know of it, but I don't. I never used it.
The basic is a gimbalized camera as well. Use micro four third lenses. I don't know if you remember that. It wasn't cheap. It wasn't cheap. I think the system without the lens is about £900 at the time, or 1,000. I can't remember now. But because of the technical limitations that time had, and so the Muse can only accept the Olympus 17mm 1.8 or the 25 1.8, and also I believe it's the Lumix Panasonic 15mm 1.7. So the smaller lenses, not the bigger 1.2 prime things. So it has to be kind of relatively compact, almost like a pancake lens, and those lenses is accepted by the system, because at the time the motor wasn't strong enough, and there's also of course the balancing issue as well. So it was made for those 3 or 4 lenses. So it's very limited choice, but you did have a bigger sensor. You do have a proper camera in place. But also another downside of that particular system was that it wasn't using phase detect, it was contrast detect. So the focusing was very slow.
I'm just having a look at the Ronin 4D kit, and I can't easily figure out what it comes with, but it's either about £5,500 or about £11,500. I can't work out which it is. But
I think the 5,500 is the 6K version.
You're right. Not really sure. So they've grayed out the lens, but you get the rest. You're right. But 6K is okay. That's not silly money, really, is it?
No. And I think they're pricing it in a way that they're trying to enter the market.
You think so?
It could just be a loss-making initial projects they're trying to do. They're trying to get filmmakers to buy the kit and start using it. But the amount of accessories that you can adapt or adjust this to the system is amazing. There's wireless video transmitters, and the LiDAR sensor, like we mentioned before, is simply on another level if you are doing a lot of automation, for instance, like mounting it onto a car or a huge gimbal and things like that. And that system is actually quite an interesting thing to use.
Could be interesting to see what happens with that.
Yeah.
What Red does.
Oh,
or Nikon, should we say?
Well, we're not supposed to talk about cine cameras. But
No, let's not talk about cine cameras. I don't know whether I think we might have covered everything with medium format, unless somebody else has some observations. But I had a question, actually. One quick question for anyone watching. Has medium format digital's opportunity been and gone? Or is it the new full frame? So it's kind of made inroads, but have people decided full frame's enough? Or do you think medium format will eventually make full frame like second best? I think it's in a balance, but I'm inclined to think it's had its chance.
Yeah. Do you think, though, I mean, like, before everybody can think about that question and give us an answer, but do you think that, when during the whole digital evolution, the digital transition, from analog to digital, medium format came really late when it comes to like really making a push in the digital world, when crop format and full frame were really like aggressive when it comes to bringing products to the market, and medium format were just kind of like on the second line, third line, fourth line, you just gone way behind everybody else's.
A little bit late, a little bit compromised. So late for sure, but also the smaller sensor size does seem like a compromise. So you can't even say that. So APS-C to full frame, there's a clear leap in sensor size, where a clear step. It's a smaller step from full frame to this kind of affordable medium format.
Yeah. It's
not such a big step as APS-C to full frame. And I think as well that now that full frame cameras are so good, the medium format makers are going to carry on having quite a hard time convincing people they need medium format. And the lenses are themselves a problem. We've had this conversation about why Micro Four Thirds is so successful, because the lenses are small.
Yeah.
It's tied to the format. Medium format will always struggle in comparison because the lenses are going to be big.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
a couple of years back, I reviewed a Hasselblad 21mm f4 for the XCD. It's spectacularly good wide angle prime. It's spectacularly good, but it's like $3,500. You know, you're in a different league for size and price.
Yeah.
That's the trouble.
Absolutely. And for those who are listening right now, and do you think, I hate to use the word death, but then do you think medium format is on the verge of disappearance? I know, I'm just saying, in general terms, but like there is going to be like a couple of premium makers out there who kind of continue making medium format cameras for the niches of the niche. But I don't think they can capture the same glory or attention what they did before in the 60s and 70s.
No, partly because the difference in size is smaller. In the analog days, the jump from 35mm to the medium format was large. But today it's not. The formats are much closer together.
Yeah.
But I would say though that the higher end full frame cameras are now so expensive, they cost more than the medium format. So if you look at something like the GFX50S2, this is an 8K video camera with 102 million pixels and phase detect AF and a pretty reasonable burst speed, not by full frame standards, but this is a pretty strong camera by any modern standards. And it's cheaper than 3 or 4 full frame cameras that I can mention. It's probably about the same as R5 Mark II.
Yep.
I'm going to guess
$5,500, something like that.
Yeah. The Fujifilm is $5,000.
Yeah.
So I think Chuck L makes a good point that the 100 megapixels, there's no desire for 100 megapixels these days. That may be true. I think it'll always be a small niche market, but there will be both professionals and especially amateurs who will just want it because it's the most. Well, it's human nature.
It is.
Isn't it?
I understand that, but it's going to be interesting for everyone as well. And obviously, we don't want to see a format just disappear from the market, because the more formats we have, the more choices we have when it comes to applications. And we always say, choose the right tool for the right job. There's always that space and thinking when it comes to making images. There will be time that I would like to use a Micro Four. There will be time that I would like to use full frame. And of course, there may be a time that I would like to use a medium format cameras. But the thing is, there are a lot of lines now being blurred because how advanced full frame camera is nowadays, especially when it comes to megapixel resolutions wise, it's closer to some of the medium format, like 50 megapixel. Yeah, you can't match 100 megapixel from the high end stuff, but like you said, not many people are really interested in 100 megapixels, considering the compromises that you're going to have when it comes to storage and speed and outright low light capabilities. So it's not going to be the same for those who are just generally snapping around.
I'll stick my neck out and say the GFX 100S2 is as good pound for pound as any full frame camera. What I mean by that is it has no compromises from its larger sensor size, apart from it being a bigger camera. It does everything that a full frame camera can do. Perhaps not everything that the best full frame cameras can do, because there are too many variables, but I don't think it is a compromise. I'm quite surprised it's not done better than it has. But as to what the future is, I don't know. I think the Hasselblad X2D100C, that's got phase detect autofocus, a million miles from the first version.
I personally think the reason why it hasn't commanded the same attention compared to, let's say, full frame or other crop sensor format is the lens choice. Even though the Fujifilm GFX line has a lot of optics to choose from, but when it comes to a guy, let's say, I just want to get a let's say a 24-72 point equivalent in a medium format world. That doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. But a lot of people are looking for convenience. You know, sometimes a zoom lens, a general nice fast zoom lens, is what they want for the entire system, and they just want to have that.
Then that's the wrong camera.
Yeah.
But then there are lots of other people who like the simplicity and way of working of prime lenses. And that's when medium format, medium format starts to pull things back, because it does make quite a lot of sense. And just to reiterate what I said earlier, that I haven't yet reviewed a bad medium format lens. They're expensive and they're not always very fast, but they are very good. You know, if you've got a full frame camera, very often you're looking at the edges of the picture, checking the resolution, checking for aberrations, thinking, oh, I don't know, it's all right. I've not seen any of that with medium format. You just look at them and you just go, wow.
Yeah.
But do you need it? Do you need it? You can want it, but do you need it?
It's the need and want question again. You know, that's always a question in all our photographers' head, especially those gear nerds, right? You know.
Yeah, I think wanting stuff takes precedence over needing stuff generally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, to be quite honest, I haven't actually had a digital medium format camera, so now you may convince me to have a look at Fujifilm. I would suggest actually try and persuade Hasselblad to loan you an X2D 100C, because they are quite special. If you're at all impressed by Scandinavian minimalism, if you're not, forget it, because they're terrible. But if, like me, you're impressed by product design, they're wonderful things. Yeah,
they take nice pictures too.
That's something like the Leica, Leica's pretty minimalistic.
It's exactly like it.
Yeah,
it's like a medium format Leica.
Yeah. When I like Leica, so that means I probably would like Hasselblad.
it's in that same ballpark, and you know how Leica REMs have very different processing and a very different look to the colors and tones. It's like that with Hasselblad. They don't look like Fujifilms or any other camera. Right. They have that kind of richness and density. So try and blag one, Jimmy.
Well, okay,
I might try and blag one myself, actually.
If I can get a huge discount, I might consider it. But
well, can you get a loaner for some videos?
I think so. I probably can get one. I'm pretty sure I can get Fujifilm, so I can try the GFX system. And
I think you'll find the GFX is just like a giant XT5 or a giant. they are really. They're so familiar, but then the results you get are so similar that you might start thinking, you know, I've got 100 million pixels, but instead of 40 or 26.
I really don't want to go 100 megapixel, because it's over the top for my use, and even 20, like I said, 24 is more than enough for me now, and so going 50 will probably the maximum would go. 100 is going to start cocking up my storage system here.
those Hasselblad 100 megapixel 16-bit RAWs are quite big.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And Chuck say that can Pixel Shift close the gap for high resolution needs?
This is a very interesting question. So I'm trying to work this out logically. The thing is that you might say that a Micro Four Thirds lens cannot resolve that kind of detail because it's physically smaller and optics aren't exactly scalable. It'd be like trying to blow up an image taken with a much smaller lens. But on the other hand, you are taking a series of images, not a single instantaneous image. So will that pixel shift affect what the lens can capture? Will you be capturing it? In effect, you're capturing a slightly displaced version of the same image with each of those individual frames. I'm not sure. I think you get more resolution than the lens's native ability, but I don't think you'll get the same resolution as a larger format. Myself.
And also another thing is about the application of pixel shift technology. Because if you want to use pixel shift, it's pretty limited to stills objects. And things that really don't move. because any sort of pixel shift means that it requires time to capture the image and blend them together, and any sort of that process would means that anything moving in the frame would show as an artifact in the ultimate image. I know there are technologies now, especially Lumix and I think some other companies, that has some kind of algorithm to make those movement looks more natural, but still you are going to see some artifacts here and there if you look close enough. So you can't really say that pixel shift technology can completely replace the actual high resolution camera. But if you are photographing something that completely still, like a product for instance, and pixel shift works perfectly fine, and you can actually make sense by using that technologies on still subjects like products, for instance, all this kind of things that doesn't move, and that is totally fine. I even try do a pixel shift portrait before, so long the subject doesn't really move that much. You're able to get away with it, and but any sort of hair movement, if you're doing outdoor, you will see a little bit blur-ish kind of strands here and there. It just doesn't look great.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think you're taking a risk if you shoot outdoors, because somewhere there's going to be a leaf moving, or a pedestrian swinging their arm, or even just specular highlights on water will really throw it out. So, you're taking a chance, I think, using it for landscapes. But for product shots, why not? But I mean, I think if you really do want improved resolution and detail, I think the only sure way to do it that's convenient is just bigger sensors and more megapixels. But get something cheap like a Sony A7R2. Or a Sony A7R3. I think they're about £1,500 or $1,500 now. 42 megapixels full frame. It's a nice balance.
Or get a D800 Nikon, the old DSLR.
Oh yeah, like the one I've got.
Yeah, exactly.
The older DSLR lenses are not. So if you get something like a modern Sony mirrorless, you can buy G Master lenses, which aren't cheap. They're cheaper than medium format. But they are very, very good. With older DSLRs like my D800, the lenses from that era weren't quite the same as today's lenses. So, it's a little less sharp, I would say. Yeah. But I think if you're determined to have resolution and detail, bigger sensor, more megapixels, I'm afraid. But then you've got to decide when enough is enough. And that's the hard part. That's the very hard part.
And I think Enrique has actually asked about, does Fujifilm medium format and Hasselblad use the same sensor?
Well, I think they must do, because be quite a coincidence if the first Hasselblad X1D50 only had contrast AF, just like the Fujifilm 50 megapixel sensor. But now the X2D 100C has phase detect AF and 102 million pixels, just like the Fujifilm sensor. So it's got to be the same. Just don't quote me. Yeah, it must be. Yeah.
It's interesting though. You have to use the same sensor, and it shows how much you can do in terms of processing, because they do look different when it comes to optics.
Completely different, yeah.
Even though it's the same sensor, and the images that each system create can be very, very different.
So I think this is all part of the magic of color science, isn't it? So I think what's happening is that even though the sensor may be the same, it's the camera's analog digital converter and processor that lends it the signature look. So Hasselblad chooses to have a 16-bit raw capture. Actually, I'm not sure if Fujifilm does one as well. I need to check. So, but what Hasselblad does with the data from the sensor is completely different to what Fujifilm does. And that's where the color science comes in. But even before you get to the raw files, it's how the color data is converted into digital data, how the analog data is converted into digital binary data.
Yeah. So that's every manufacturer's own interpretation of colors. Yep.
So all raw files are not the same because there's a lot of stuff going on even before the raw file is generated.
Yeah.
So Hasselblad Reds won't look the same as Fujifilms because of what they're doing with the analog data from the sensor.
Yep. That certainly is an interesting thing that we talked about this many times about color science. But now let's ask the audience now, and I think that we haven't quite got a response from earlier, and is that, do you think medium formats do have a future? I think that would be a question for you guys. Do you think that would any one of you ever going to try or buy a medium format camera? I would like to hear that from you. And we all, like Rod said, we all want it, but do we need it?
Not to the point of paying for it, though.
No. Unless they're like £1,000, which is no way you can even get that sort of prices, even in second-hand market. So it's going to be an interesting thing, because I personally would like one, but I have no need for it, and that's for sure. Because
so it's a photographer on the corner from me who makes his own cameras. And I said, well, how do you get film? And he said, I either cut film from large sheets, or I use paper negatives. And I said, well, you use a paper negative. What do you do with that? Do you make a contact print? He said, no, I get my phone out, photograph, and use Snapseed to turn it into a positive. So that's his digital workflow. He makes his own cameras, shoots on all sorts of formats, ranging from what looks like about a 6 by 12 centimeter biscuit tin panoramic camera with a pinhole lens, right up to folding film cameras he's adapted to take 5 by 4 sheet film, which will either cut down or use a paper negative, and then he digitizes it with his phone. I don't say anything because that's what he likes to do, but it's interesting that he gets the experience of shooting on larger formats. Yeah. And it's a kind of analog process. And then he just digitizes it for distribution and sharing and all that kind of thing. Yeah.
Enrique said that medium format has a future, but I'll rent a Hasselblad, too expensive to buy. I think that's everybody's, right? And for those who want one, we'll probably just rent it and experience it, or maybe just rent it whenever it needs it rather than buying the system outright.
So which would you rent? Would you rent the kind of modular SLR style, which is proper 6x4 size medium format, or would you rent one of the smaller handheld cameras? Because it's an interesting choice. Those SLR types, they're big old boys. They are like the Hasselblad H6 and Pentax PhaseONE modular systems.
Well, remember the Pentax 645 SLR? It was an old clunky thing, wasn't it?
Wait, we know what the regular SLRs are like. Imagine that scaled up.
When we say scaled up, it's not just the size, but also the sound and the vibration also been amplified.
It's a mirror the size of an oven tray. Not quite. But
I remember handling one of those 645 medium format SLR Pentax ones, and it makes one of the loudest mirror clap ever, that I've ever heard of.
And that's not even big medium format. I haven't used one of the Hasselblad H system cameras, and I haven't used a PhaseONE. The thing is, though, that I need to think quickly here. With Hasselblad, though, you have leaf shutter lenses. Yep. So you don't have to have that shutter action. Or does that apply to the larger Hasselblad system, or is it only the XCDs? I feel like I've arrived very unprepared for this conversation, Jimmy. I should check.
They mean the leaf shutter lens. I think they all are leaf shutter lenses.
Even in the H system Hasselblads, do you think?
I believe so. Yes.
Because I thought they had mirrors.
They had mirrors, but the digital version, I'm not entirely sure. Do they still use the old lenses?
Let's have a look. So it's the V system.
Angelo Player for one is here. Hello. There are lots of tulips to photograph with medium format cameras. I like tulips.
I did use the 907X, which is like a hybrid. I like that a lot. So that is basically a slim camera, which isn't really a camera. You put a 50 megapixel back on the rear, and you put Hasselblad XCD lenses on the front, and it looks just like an old Hasselblad 500C.
Yeah.
But as for I can't find this, so I'm not sure they make them anymore. I don't think Hasselblad makes the H system at all.
No, last time when I went to
Do you think that's
Hasselblad
gone?
in London, I didn't see that at all. I saw the XCD system. I saw the one that you mentioned, the hybrid one.
Yeah.
I don't think I recall seeing the H system. Chuck just said it. What about older used digital medium format cameras? Even in the 2010 era, they were about 40 megapixel. Yes, they can be relatively affordable by medium format standard, but back in 2010, the mirrorless, not the mirrorless, I mean the medium format cameras sensors weren't exactly great compared to today's technologies. You may have the resolutions, but there are a lot of compromises.
I seem to remember that back in the day, they were technically somewhat backward, but also frighteningly expensive.
Yeah, and
they might be
especially when it
cheaper
comes to noise performance, is signal to ratio is quite bad compared to even full frame sensors. So you may get a look in very controlled lighting situation. You're gonna get great prints and great results, but they're not a flexible system like today's digital medium format cameras. That's for sure.
So the Hasselblad H6D is still a thing.
It's still a thing.
I couldn't see easily on the Hasselblad side, but B&H still has them. But then B&H always has everything ever made, so that doesn't prove anything. But yeah, it's still a thing.
B&H is a photographic museum.
Yeah, every year on Black Friday, it finds stuff you thought had gone for good, but it finds some more.
Right. Tone has a comment here. In the past, I worked with several medium format cameras like Bronica, Mamiya, and Fuji 680, but now I can get everything with the OM1 Mark II.
See that is the thing that we forget, that analog film does not have the resolving power that sensors do.
Yeah.
You know, I used to shoot 35mm film, but there's no way you capture even a fraction of the detail that a modern sensor does. You just don't. Best not to look too hard.
I don't know if any of you remember the argument when we first had digital cameras. Everyone said that digital sensor would never ever gonna eclipse the detail of an analog film.
I may have said something similar myself, but in my defense, that was when all the people could afford were ghastly little point and shoot cameras with about 1 or 2 megapixels.
Yeah.
So that's my defense. But no, that's completely changed.
But yes. Because to be honest, even a modest micro four third cameras with 20 megapixels is easily out resolve any of the 35mm film that we had before.
Yeah, for sure. Unfortunately, but it's for analog film fans. But yeah. So I think you can get an H6D 100C for $33,000.
Hey, that's a bargain.
But without a lens.
Oh shit!
So you've got to find your own lenses, but I still can't figure out whether it's an SLR or not.
Right.
A bit of information seems to be missing, but it is a bigger medium format sensor. But that's the thing. Then, if you want your full fat medium format camera, it's still going to cost a packet, an absolute packet.
Look at this Marina C33 220 TLR. It is to be too big to lug around. I rarely shoot with it anymore.
The C330. I often wanted to buy one of those, but could never find one that I felt I could afford.
I have three TLRs lying around, and
you got 3. I haven't got any.
Yeah, I had the I had a Zeiss Icon, which is a really good one, really good one. It's got really spectacular lens. It's a very complicated TLR, which is probably over-engineered, very easy to break. That's why I don't really shoot with it, because I can't find spare parts to repair it anymore. And then I do have the Yashica. What was the last Yashica has? Is it the G20? I can't remember which one it was now. And then I also have the cheapo, if I can have one. Yes, I have it here. Right. Okay. Before I pull everything down, let's see if we can get this one out. Okay. Right. And I have this guy here. Don't know if you guys can see it. The Lubito.
It's yours. I had one of those back in the day, and it broke almost immediately. But yours looks more complicated than mine.
This is the latest Lomo reissue, Lomography reissue.
They're not. They're expensive.
£280 when
I know.
Ridiculous for a plastic thing.
My Lubitel 2 in about 1984 was £8. It's probably about what it's worth.
Yeah.
So I hope yours is better made than mine was.
Well, it's certainly weight a bit. I think it's probably the same weight as an EM10 Mark IV.
Yeah.
But I have to say the lens is sharp. The lens is really sharp. Yeah, it's surprisingly sharp when I shoot with this guy here. Even it's a very modest 3.5 aperture, but the negative that I developed and the prints came out of it is super sharp. So like the lens is really good. I don't know whether it's the same as ones that they used in the Lubito 2 before.
That lens was
sharp.
Not impressive. It had considerable vignetting.
Well, this does vignette.
But it was sharp in the center.
Oh, very, very sharp center, and but it's vignetting is a Lomo thing, right? They call it the character. They call the character all the Lomo stuff. So to them, vignette is not a flaw. True.
Yeah. I also had a Yashica Mat 124G.
Oh, that's the one. Yashica Mat. That's it. Yashica Mat. Yes. Lovely camera. I love that camera. And
I did. I think I broke mine somehow.
It's very easy to shoot with that guy as well compared to all the other TLRs that I've used. And the Yashica Mat is definitely one of the most user-friendly TLRs you can buy for the money. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, I don't think they're cheap today.
No.
And you probably get one for a collection rather than for actual use. But at the time, they weren't that dear.
No,
I love mine.
When I bought mine, when I bought mine used, it was about £80.
Yeah. That's quite good. That's quite a bargain.
Yeah, and I think now they're going for £300-400 for a good condition one.
but the TLR experience is just like nothing else. It's strange, isn't it? You would think it'd be awful because you've got to flip open the lid. You've got to look in this box, and you've got to turn some knobs, and everything's the wrong way round. How can that be enjoyable?
I have to say, the user experience of this thing is definitely weird, and also the fact that is that you have to look into the viewfinder top down, and everything just moves the opposite direction. So it does your heading a little bit when you're trying to compose. Because when you're trying to move left, the images in there move right. So
that's right. Yeah, everything goes the wrong way when you try and reframe it.
Yeah, so everything just like kind of mess up your head, and it's quite hard to shoot initially. But once you get used to it, and then it's actually quite interesting to shoot with. Quite fun, actually.
Probably be quite good for street photography too.
Well,
because you're never looking at a subject.
Yeah, like Vivian Maier, right? Famously used the Rolleiflex for street photography. I do like the viewfinder. Look at that. Okay, look at that. Cool.
That is just a beautiful thing to look at when you compose a picture. I can't explain it. it.
Even for Lubito, like this viewfinder is cool. It's just so big and clear and sharp, and it's just a nice thing to look at.
And can I also say, by all means, shoot me down. If you replace that ground glass screen with an LCD, it would be awful.
Oh,
it would lose all its charm.
Yep. You know, you got to have a proper ground glass in it. You can't replace it with a screen.
No.
Well,
it looks like everyone wants a TLR.
Well, we said that before, right? You know, and someone should make a digital TLR, like just have a digital sensors, but still using the twin lens setup, one for taking, one for viewing. You know, like it have to keep the same formula.
I think actually, in a practical sense, it's expensive to buy 120 film now, and it's not necessarily straightforward to get it processed. But I will say that with 120, you can get a good result from a flatbed scanner.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do it with 35mm because flatbeds aren't good enough for that level of magnification. But I have got good results from a decent flatbed with a transparency adapter. So getting a TLR into your digital workflow would not be impossible, and you wouldn't have to invest in any chemistry or a darkroom. Just get it film processed and then scan it. That's how I would do it.
I just looking at this viewfinder. Now you got me looking.
Come back, Jimmy. Come back. Look at it later. Don't be rude.
I need to start loading some films now again and shoot with this guy here.
I'll have a little investigate to see how practical it is to get films. I mean, my friend round the corner thinks it's easy, but then he's somebody who makes his own fisheye lenses.
Right.
And the cameras out of biscuit tins. So,
by the way, you know, it's off topic again, but for those who want to get films like analog films, negatives or positives, is actually, I know a place from the States in the US that sells negatives, ship to the UK, still cheaper than you buy in the UK.
You still got to get them processed, I guess, but
yeah. But if you want to buy films, and there's a company called Retrospect, I can put the link in the description after the chat. They do sell a lot of vintage stuff, not just photography stuff, but they do a lot of refurbished what's the instant camera? Was it with Polaroid cameras?
Polaroids, yeah.
They also sell a lot of films and negatives. If you add up the cost, if you buy 3-4 rolls at a time, it's actually work out cheaper than buying it in the UK. When they ship to you, they already tax included, so like you don't have to pay tax. Everything's done, and so you pay the price in the shipping. Everything's calculated for you already. So like everything included. It's still about 20% cheaper than I pay in the UK, which is kind of ridiculous.
I guess the thing is as well that if we've got to pay through the nose to get an old TLR, and we've got to pay a fortune to get film, and then again to get it processed, we're going to make sure we spend a lot of time on each image, aren't we? That could be a good thing.
Well, but then again, you know, when you start talking about the medium format digital cameras prices, you know, I think, depending on the number of photographs you intend to use in medium format, you know, it's still not going to add up to the cost of the medium format digital camera.
There is that, and I would have to get a flatbed scanner, wouldn't I, with an adapter. But I'm just looking at 120 roll film now, and it's not like it's unavailable.
No, it's
you can buy
around. Yeah, you can still buy them. They're just expensive.
It is. I'm just looking at one here, 10 rolls of FP4. 120, £77, so that's £7.70 a roll. Well, but it's not outrageous, is it?
I don't know, but I used to pay like £3 a row.
Yeah, but when, what was that? 1968. That was that a while ago, Jimmy, was it?
It is a while ago.
It might have been, yeah.
You know, like for those who still remember, like the analog films, 35mm format, not 120. Yeah, a roll of a generic Kodak, you know, Go 200. It was like $1.99 from Boots.
Yeah,
you'll be lucky to find one less than £10 these days.
I always used to shoot Kodachrome, which had processing included, and when it got to £5 for a 36 exposure roll, I was thinking, well, it's quite a lot of money now, isn't it? It's quite a lot of money. £5 for 36 exposures. I know processing is included. If only I knew what was coming.
Now, like, easily a very normal generic film costs you about £10, and you add another £15 for processing. Yeah,
I have to vent a little rage here because of all the software simulations that say they recreate Kodachrome 25 or 64. They do not. I can tell you that they do not. Those films cannot be reproduced digitally.
No. And I think like all thing analog, including, sorry, Fujifilm lovers, all the film simulations that Fujifilm had told you that it replicates what they look like in film days is a lie. For those who are diehard Fujifilm negative users or analog users, would concur with me that anything you shot in the past, if you look at those negatives, all those prints that you got from your developers, they don't look anything like the modern digital converter versions, and none of them look like that. There is some similarity in certain tonalities, certain colors may have that resemblance of a Fujifilm, but it's definitely nothing like the actual thing that you've done before.
So it's like the Velvia simulation. The digital one is heavily saturated, somewhat contrasty, but it looks quite overprocessed and sickly to me.
It does.
The analog Velvia was nothing like that. It's very saturated, very contrasted, but it looked natural. But the digital one is missing something. But Kodachrome 64, it's got me really annoyed now, had this reputation for being quite magenta. I never saw it. I thought it's a terrific film. And Kodachrome 25 is just the best.
Yeah.
If only they quite neutral. Don't ever try and use Kodachrome 25 with a polarizer, because you end up at about ISO 6 or something ridiculous.
Oh yeah, remember those slow films that we had before, and
yeah.
But slow films, for those who don't know analog films, the slower the film, the finer the grain. That's usually is the case. So if you want really like sharp images, at least from the perceived level of sharpness, you go for the lower ISO values, and that's why people used to shoot with the 100 ISO in the old days. They say, oh, that's the best compromise when it comes to quality, sharpness, and speed. And then when it comes to 400 grains, they start showing everywhere, and 800 is really kind of like an emergency thing.
Oh god, yeah. 400, you ISO 400 film, or SA 400, you would have to be pretty desperate to go that high. 200 was a bit, and 100 was quite fast.
But then again, that's another argument. That's we'll now talk about medium format, right? In the old days, all these analog developments and things like that, the grain size remain the same regardless of format. So that means if you use a larger format, you look at the negative,
that's great.
It actually like a 200 would look like 100 in a 35mm format. Yeah. So that's why the larger format you go, the better quality you're going to get from the print, even if you use a higher ISO or higher speed film. And that's why another reason to go with the medium format cameras.
I think as well the lenses are not being you're enlarging a bigger image in the first place. So never mind the camera lenses, your enlarger lens has got less to do, because it's making a smaller enlargement because the negative is larger. So I'm tempted now. I'm very tempted. So Andrew Bannon thinks, you can get yourself some balls, tanks, and chemicals, etc. You can. I always found a number of things with doing your own developing though. Trying to get 120 film onto a spiral, I never got the knack. It's tricky. And if you get one of those Patterson spirals where you do the twisting, 120 film is just a little too wide, and it just sticks and puckers, and you've wrecked your film. And the other thing is, if you're in a hurry and you try and load your 35mm film before your spirals are dry, oh no, you've had it. And the other thing is, if you do this at home, where you're going to dry films that isn't dusty. There isn't anywhere.
Even if you do find a space, your wife may not like the chemical smell.
there is that. I did use rubber squeegees on my film, but that left too many scratches. Yeah. I tended just to wet my fingers and just run my fingers down the film just to take off the excess water. But that's the other thing. You always get drying marks if you live in a hard water area like me.
Yeah. Unless
you just wash all your film with distilled water, which was another layer of complication.
And cost.
I think,
even though it's not that cheap.
I think I'll probably be lazy and do it at a lab now, but I think I would still scan. I'll then scan the negatives or the transparencies on the flatbed and go from there.
I do get them developed and then scan myself and afterward. Yeah, that's the thing. Andrew also asked, how well does DxO film pack emulate analog? Same thing. You know, like I
think it's quite good at evoking an era.
Yeah.
And simulating films and papers and diagram processes you've never seen for yourself. But everything I have seen for myself is just and DxO tries harder than most, but it is just an imitation. It's not quite the same. It's not the same.
I mean, I think that the overall film emulation thing is it's not just about colors. It's also about the organic structure that you see in negatives, and that's something you really can't emulate. Even though there's simulation for grains, but it's still going to be really hard to match what the real thing really is. You know, if you look at the negatives themselves, blow them up with a scope, and then you can see the grain structure. It's very, very different to any sort of emulation you see online these days.
I think what a lot of software gets wrong is the grain, because to look realistic, the grain has to be eroding the detail in the image. So I've used a lot of film emulation tools where they just put the grain on as an overlay, which is completely wrong because you've got the grain pattern on top of very sharp detail. It just doesn't work. The grain has to eat away the detail. So I think I would say the two best programs I've used for that are Capture One and Lightroom.
Yeah,
their grain effects do actually eat away at the detail, which is exactly what they should do. Others, not so good. But I think if you're trying to emulate film, you've got a number of struggles. You've got a very complex shift in color response. The color response of a film, it's not as simple as saying, oh, push up the blues, pull back the reds. It's much subtler and more complex than that. You've got the grain pattern, which is difficult to get right. And you've got the tonality, which is quite difficult as well, because digital cameras, digital sensors tend to have quite a flat tonality where they're kind of fair to every tonal region. But films aren't like that. And if you try to recreate a film curve, it might be quite complicated, and you probably end up with rather more contrast than you're used to. It's very different. It's a whole bunch of things to simulate film.
It is, and also like don't forget about the film is also react to a light at a certain temperature. That's what it's designed for. Any fluctuation in temperature also changed how the film reacts and create those images. Those things digital can't cater for. You know, they can emulate that standard tonal curve, but if you apply to all the other digital image as a whole, like a generic batch process, you're never going to get the same effect like shooting with a roll of film.
No, and I think the other thing as well is that any film emulation you do digitally is on top of processing that's already been carried out. So if you do it to a JPEG, the camera's already processed a JPEG how it wants to, and then you're trying to add something on top of that. If you do it to a RAW file, you're still at the mercy of the RAW profiles and your RAW software. So what you're trying to emulate a look of something that's already been processed once. So it all gets quite messy.
So instead of calling them certain film stock emulation, I would just basically call it a style. You know, if you like that style, just call it. I'm not suggesting any of the emulation software are bad, to be quite honest. If you like that look, like the colors, you know, by all means use them. But I wouldn't say that they can completely replace or recreate, you know, some of these older proper analog films.
I don't think there's a strong case for those technical arguments that, oh, this is Ilford-Pan F, this is Kodak Tri-X, this is Agfa-Pan 25, and this is a grain pattern for each. I don't believe in one word of that myself. I think there are too many variables. You just go for a look you like. So you can do this in GXO Film Pack, which has got this kind of reassuring technical basis to it. Myself, I'm just as happy in analog effects in the Nick collection, because it's not attempting to be accurate about anything, but it still has the looks. Yeah, they're pretty wild, but sometimes that's what you're after.
Yep, that's it. Right, okay, that's interesting about photographic style, though that we kind of sidetracked completely from medium
format. Going to analog now.
There, I know. All of a sudden we change everything to analog. But that really is, and I think that it seems that people are definitely a little bit more remote when it comes to medium format cameras, and I can understand it, because the majority of us aren't really used to using medium format cameras, analog or not. Even in digital terms, it's probably even more remote, simply because the cost involved in buying medium format cameras, aside from obviously Fujifilm and Pentax, they are relatively affordable by medium format camera standards. But if you're looking at Hasselblad, PhaseONE, they are extremely expensive. They're not really for everybody, everyday photographers. So, it's going to be interesting to see how it develops in the next few years.
I would say if you can afford a Leica, consider a Hasselblad X2D.
Yeah.
But I think it's harder to make the case for the Fujifilm unless you're a photographer who just needs to scale up the quality in every direction.
That's just interesting remarks there. But at the same time, we forgot another thing as well. Leica used to make medium format SLRs, right?
The S3, yeah.
The S2, the S3, S1. But Leica also stopped making them, and obviously they didn't sell too many of them.
Well, they would have sold more if they'd got them onto market. The S3 seemed to be like waiting in the wings for years. And by the time it did dribble onto the market, nobody cared anymore. That's how it seemed. We were trying to get one for review on Digital Camera World for ages.
But There's a very unlike Leica thing, right? Leica usually pretty good at launching products, even though availability can be scarce. But certainly in terms of review products or review units and actual availability, there could be a waiting list, but they should have some available.
Do you think perhaps they had ongoing technical issues with the design and they lost interest in overcoming them? I mean, we did try one out at Photokina one year, and then for years after that, same old story. Not available, not on sale yet. And then eventually one day we woke up, you can buy them. Oh, out of stock, pre-order, etc.
I think Leica just got distracted with the up and coming Q at the time in the mirrorless system and all the other mirrorless camera that they wanted to launch. Like the crop sensor cameras that they launched a couple of times. Even now they're defunct and discontinued too. So
The Leica site it's telling me all about the S3 and asking if I want to find a store. Let's see if I can buy one.
Very unlikely. You probably find second hand and used one.
Camera Centre UK. It's only all it's doing is telling me places that sell Leica gear, not whether it's got one. I bet B&H has got one.
But anyway, so that's really is, and so Leica has no longer being a medium format player with what they used to be.
No.
And so it's unfortunate we got one player down, but we still got the others, and hopefully maybe one day we'll see DJI making something, even though they may not be medium format, but that would be quite exciting if they do launch a camera after all. So just wait and see. So I guess if anyone want to hear anything, let us know in the comment section below, and also what sort of medium format things that you may still interested in or not.
I can feel an article brewing. My next opinion piece is going to be medium format digital made me want to go back to analog.
Oh, and Andrew just say B&H probably has a brand new Louboutin.
They even B&H says the Leica S3 is no longer available. That's how unavailable it is.
Wow.
That is seriously unavailable if B&H doesn't have it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel bad for those who invested in the S system, the Leica S system. There's no successor. They're not cheap.
It's a nice camera to hold as well. Big but nice.
Yeah, but all those lenses now are pretty much wasted because you can't adapt to anything else, unfortunately.
No. But maybe you wouldn't have bought the lenses if you didn't have an S3 or an S2, so maybe you're okay after all. I don't know.
Oh, look, Enrique found an S3 for $14,000 US.
Oh, that's
eBay.
bargain.
Yeah,
I wonder if MPB has any.
Yeah.
I shouldn't think so.
By the way, Andrew, Lomography recently got some stock of the Louboutin back, so you can buy brand new Louboutin from Lomography. They probably have bumped up the price by now. It probably cost $350 now.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, everything's gone up. Okay, cool. Right, I guess this concludes our brand talks. And so next week we're going to have something completely new. And so if anyone have anything they want to say, want us to include in the conversation, please do remember, leave us some comments down below. Anything you would like to discuss, photography, general, and any sort of past master that you may want us to explore a little bit, like Enrique de Brasson for street photography, Ansel Adam, Ansel Adam, and also all the other masters that you may want to have a deeper look. We can definitely dig something up and show some images that we can talk about them. That would be quite interesting. Or alternatively, want to learn a little bit about editing skill. We got a master here, Rod, and who are very, very good with Photoshops and Lightroom and things like that. And he can tell you all about those stuff. In fact, you have a website, Rod, about those stuff.
I do. Lifeafterphotoshop.com.
There you go.
Which seemed a good idea at the time, but now I've realised I can't write anything about Photoshop. But hey, that's okay.
To be honest, soon you don't have to, right? Everything's gonna be AI. Just type in a prompt, make me nice images, and it just does it all for you.
Don't. Let's not even go there. But seriously, if anyone does have any ideas about things they want to discuss, do say. Otherwise, there's a good chance I'm just going to show you my favourite tripods for 2 hours because I've got them ready. So you've been warned.
Yeah. Like we said, guys, and this door is open, and hoping that this is really a photographer community here. So we just want to talk about photography, talk about gear, talk about things that we all are happy to listen to, talk about, and discuss about. So if you have any ideas, anything you may want to talk about, give us some ideas. So we would take your ideas and bring it forward, and then we're going to go from there. And if you're not like what said, he's going to show you his tripod for 2 hours. And
I've got a lot of tripods,
and I will show you
mostly the same.
And I will show you my Louboutin for 2 hours. How's that? Okay, great
Excellent.
stuff. Right, thanks a lot for joining us once again. Thanks, Rod, for bringing us some laugh. Hopefully next week we won't have any more issues about connections. It's really hard to do this live stream without any problem, right? Every week it seems to have some problems.
Yeah, I think it just doesn't like me. There we go. I'm used to that. It's fine.
Right, guys, and thank you very much. I'm trying to find an outro here. There you go. That's the outro. Right, I will see you all next time. So remember to stay tuned.
Yeah.
Next Wednesday, same time. All right, then. Bye for now.
Bye.